Okay, good to see you again. For today's class, we're going to talk and introduce muscle tissue. This is one of the tissues we talked about as we introduced epithelial tissue and the supporting components associated with that. We'll have one additional tissue to discuss after muscle tissue, and that deals with what we'll learn about nervous tissue. And that will summarize and finish up all the topics associated with tissue, and we'll move on to our next system associated with the content. So to begin with muscle tissue, we know that letter A it's a function. Its main function is to produce movement. You move daily, athletics, to and from school, to and from class. So the main function of muscle tissue deals with movement. Excuse me. For letter B, we know that there are three types. And we'll discuss these in the next few slides. Number one being skeletal muscle tissue, number two being cardiac muscle tissue, and number three being smooth muscle tissue. Let's continue to go in this development, and remember that at the end of this section dealing with skeletal muscle tissue, you also have an analysis to build that will be due for homework the following day. So let's start with skeletal muscle tissue. We know this is muscle tissue that can be controlled voluntarily. And if you look at that diagram at the top, the picture, it might be something as simple as moving your arm. So this is definitely something that you can control in a variety of different ways throughout the course of your day. Letter B, we know that these cells attach to connective tissue. And if you remember the foundation associated with connective tissue, it connects a variety of different things. We gave a variety of examples of that relationship, but these are unique. Skeletal tissue has cells that attach to connective tissue. Okay. C, cells are striated. And if you look at these cells, striated, a good way to identify that, and we write this down in number one, it's a band. They appear banded. And if you look at that, you can kind of see those bands in both diagrams, especially A. You can see that muscle has a band appearance. A little bit easier to see at the top diagram compared to the bottom, but they have a band appearance. And then finally, letter D, these cells have more than one nucleus. Okay, so as a means to summarize this topic, at the bottom of your first page of your packet, I'd like you to create an analysis between skeletal muscles and connective muscles. Remember our template for an analysis, and once again this will be due as homework the following day, and I'd like you to complete this independently. Okay, moving on, cardiac muscles are another type of muscle tissue. And if you think about cardiac and you look at the diagram at the top, cardiac, you think of your heart. So letter A, we know that these are muscles found only in your heart. And for letter B, if you think about your heart and what your heart does, we know that this is a function associated with the movement of material, and that material specifically being blood. So letter B, we know what the function is to pump blood, and this is something that's involuntary, meaning that you cannot control this action. And we know the cells that deal with muscle tissues specifically, these cells are attached to other cardiac muscle cells at intercalculated, and we have two components that will support what we just talked about in letter C, cells being attached to other cardiac muscles at intercalated discs. We know that this takes place and resembles a branching network. So that would be number one. And number two, intercalated discs. These are membranes locked together via gap junctions. And if you remember gap junctions from our cells, when we talked about the individual components of cells, gap junctions created that bond between the cell membranes of adjacent cells. And we also know that in letter D, these cells are also striated, and we talked about the components of being striated in the previous slide, and they only have one nucleus per cell. Alright, moving on to our third type of muscle tissue, we're going to talk about smooth muscles. And you can see the relationship here just from the diagram. Smooth muscles are specific to specific regions, including the digestive tract within your body. A little bit about these muscles. We know, letter A, that they're involuntary muscles, meaning that you do not necessarily have control over these, such as you would the muscles found in your arms or legs or movement-based purposes. Letter B, we know that these muscles surround hollow organs, and just from what we've seen in our cells dealing with columnar cells, you could identify the organs of the digestive tract as being hollow just from those diagrams we saw and how that material is coated and then moves throughout that tract. We also know that muscle tissues have cells that are attached to other smooth muscle cells. That would be letter C. And for letter D, these types of cells are a little bit different. They have no visible striations associated with them, and they only have one nucleus per cell. So at the conclusion of this page of the packet, on your last page, we'll ask you to identify both similarities and differences between all three types of muscle tissues. Once again, this will be for homework for the following day, and I would like you to complete this independently by yourself. If you have any questions, let me know. Other than that, have a good day.